Artificial intelligence has the potential to change much about the world around us, from the way we work to the way we learn. It is likely we are on the precipice of multiple revolutions brought about by the advent of this technology. It has also the potential to change how we practice, experience, and even imagine democracy. My name is Justin Kempf. I am the host of the podcast Democracy Paradox. Please check it out, subscribe, 5 stars. I have the honor to chair this distinguished panel, and we've got some amazing presenters today. Our panelists will discuss the intersection between artificial intelligence and democracy, both as academics and practitioners. Dmitry Zaytsev blends research of politics and society with the most cutting-edge techniques and technologies. He is an associate professor of practice in the Lucy Family Institute for Data and Society. He has a PhD in political science, but his research focuses substantially on using data science methods in social, behavioral, and economic studies. His presentation is called State of the Art in AI for Democracy Research, Gaps Between Academic Interests and Public Concern. Lisa Schirch combines scholarship and research with a practitioner's approach. She is the Richard G. Starman Senior Professor of the Practice of Peace Studies. Her current research uses technology for positive roles in peace tech and digital peace building. She is also a senior fellow with the Notre Peace Institute, where she works on new technologies to scale social cohesion. Her presentation is AI-enhanced deliberative technologies. Finally, Altamirano Rayo is someone who works on these problems in her role as chief data scientist and responsible AI official at the U.S. Department of State's Office of Management Strategy and Solutions Center for Analytics. She has a JD, master's, and PhD in political science and government. She is also a National Science Foundation scholar. Her presentation is Operationalizing Responsible and Trustworthy AI in the State Department. Each panelist will give their presentation. I will then take a few minutes to offer some remarks before opening the discussion up to further questions. But now, I'd like to welcome Dmitry Zaytsev to the podium.
Thank you for such a great introduction. So, as Justin said, I represent here Lucy Family Institute for Data and Society, and I will share today with you the research that I conducted especially for this conference. So, where is the story? The story is that on the one side we have the academic interest in the topic of AI and democracy. On the other side, we have a public concern about this topic. So, and the question is, what is the gap? What academia doesn't cover, and what do practitioners want to know about this and concern about it? To answer these questions, we conduct a research using AI, we collected here publications, academic publications from Web of Science. On the one hand, on the other hand, we collected as well the mass media articles from the Factiva, that is Dow Jones Media, and we use AI methods, NLP, topic mining, everything, to do two things: to provide a general picture of how we called it bird-eye view on this topic, AI and democracy, trying to figure out the broader topics in this context, and the snake view that will provide you the understanding about the narrower topics that we have here. talking about data, yeah, as we about data all at Lucy Institute. So we collected about 7,000 records in Factiva and only 745 records. The query was the same actually, for both WAS and Factiva, but you already can see that the public concern is much more bigger, it is bigger than the academic response to this concern. So at least we have 10 times more media articles about AI and democracy than in academia. Together it's about more than 8,000 articles. First, what we've done is topic mining, and we identified 15 topics for the larger cluster for the media articles about democracy and AI, and 7 topics where we identified the articles for the Web of Science, that is academic topics actually. And we want to identify the best practices that both academia and practitioners use and how they together can learn from each other. Here is it, the 15 topics, bird view topics, or broader topics about AI and democracy that we figure out. You can have a look into this. I just make a short overview of this, that their most popular topic or representative topic in the corpus is about political ideology, number 10, political ideology, crisis of journalism, broad implication of technology, prediction and historical parallels. So it's actually complementary to what I'm trying to do here in Notre Dame, that is forecasting the future of democracy. And this is what actually public is about. What do they want? They want to understand the future. Yeah? They want to understand, using historical parallels from different perspectives, from different ideology, they want to understand that. That is actually complementary to the 14 topics that is actually very represented, that called artificial democracy. So it's one of the one of the notion of the future type of democracy that we are looking for. Yeah? And other topics, a big cluster is about the threats from AI to the democracies from authoritarian states. That is very complementary to the first session that we have today, from China and Russia. Threat to elections. Another big topic is about disinformation, misinformation, and media manipulation that we are talking about today as well. And a lot of other different topics. So another thing that I want to say here is that we have here the concern of the media, and actually we can say practitioners, like government, civil society, business, about regulation of AI. This is a big topic, ethical dilemmas connected with these regulations. Wow, okay. So I have only 4 minutes. 7 topics on academia. You can see here, you cannot. So the most representative is about public policy, actually. Public policy issues like climate change, like civil, human rights, public engagement, and again, forecasting of democracy. This is something that we have in common. This is the snake new, actually it's a result of network analysis, the co-occurrence of the words in the texts, and here we have a bunch of dozens of topics. This is the most important one. Again, global threats to democracy that we have here. We discuss it today. We have a big topic about public concern, government demand, corporate impact, workforce of the future. There's continuing debates about that the AI will substitute the humans in our workplaces. Big cluster on benefits of AI that I want to emphasize, that we are talking always about the threats of AI, but also there are a lot of benefits of AI. So this is what they are talking about as well. For academic research, here we have maybe the most important for me at least, system dynamics. So academia as their function here is to reflect about the future, to reflect about the past, present, future. So here we have AI and democracy that put in a broader context. about the humanity, where we are moving from. So, like economic system, capitalism, what is the future of economic system? What is the future of political system in general, social system in general? So the social change and system dynamics is the context for AI and democracy for academicians, and other topics as well that I already mentioned. Most important is about this, what is the common interest and concerns. So both academia and practitioners agreed that the most important topic is media manipulation. Misinformation, disinformation, deepfakes, this is what AI brings to us, this is what academia can detect, and this is what public is concerned about. Yeah. So this is the number one thing to collaborate. Global threats to democracy, we discussed it during the first session. So this is what AI brings, this is what AI can provide to resist this influence from authoritarian state. Transformation to deliberative and participatory liquid democracy is one of my favorite things, that AI is not only the threat, actually this is a very crucial tool to overcome the crisis of representative democracy and to give us a way to the new forms of democracy that is the future one. And AI here is a crucial tool. Forecasting democracy and policy issues and AI-driven solutions, this is what AI can be used. So academia, opportunities for collaboration with practitioners. So what do practitioners are looking for and want us as academicians to do? So they are looking for academic leadership. Yeah? So now the leadership in the AI industry is up to corporations, up to corporate sector. So the public wants academia to lead in this sphere. Ethical dilemmas, privacy threats, data usage, this is what public in general concerns. General risk to humanity started from the Elon Musk letter and other experts that want to stop the AI development for at least for 6 months. Yeah, this is about this, that they said it is a risk to humanity, they didn't succeed. So to deal with current political agenda, this is what practitioners want from academia. AI impact on corporate workforce of the future. What is the future jobs? How the AI development will impact the workforce market. And government demands in AI. This is what governments want. They demand more regulations of AI. Next is practitioners, opportunities for collaboration with academia. So what do academia can bring, what is already developed in the AI and democracy topic? It's system dynamics. So to show the broader picture for the stakeholders, what AI can bring to social change. This is what academia can contribute here. Different dimensions of AI effects on democracy, civil education, norms development, public norms development, response to crisis of representative democracy, investigating the effects of the populism, human-AI interaction, that is the future topic for this, and a very, very perspective. And in conclusion, I want to emphasize that threats is a domineering when we are talking about AI and democracy, but not the most important topic of common interest. So actually AI is a crucial tool for further democratic development. As I said, so it's not only the threat, we have to change a little bit our paradigm and not just talking about the threats, but we have to actually talk about AI as a tool, how we can use it to strengthen our democracy, to make it better, to transform our democratic institutions to the new one. And another conclusions that the topic of public discourse and democracy is widely consistently discussed in mass media. So it's very coherent in mass media, very coherent in public discourse, contrary to academia. And there can be several explanations why it's happened, why in academia it's not very coherent, why it consists of different clusters that are not connected with each other. Maybe because the definition of AI is very fuzzy. It's under-theoretized, especially the AI and the AI influence on democracy. And it's bring a hope that it's a great domain for future research and for Notre Dame leadership actually in this topic. This is it, thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry, for that great presentation. Lisa?
All right, greetings. Thank you, Dmitry. That was a perfect introduction and exploration of the topic from your research. And it set up my topic very well. So I'm mostly going to focus on the positive use of AI for democracy and the movement of deliberative technology and the deliberative wave that started in Europe and now is taking over the world. The OECD published a paper on the deliberative wave as a method, as a way of fostering participation to push back on polarization and populism in Europe, and starting with citizen assemblies that were mostly in person, and then the idea of how do we use technology to broaden not just hundreds of people in a citizen assembly, but thousands and actually even millions of people can now participate in citizen deliberations on key topics in different countries around the world. I'm going to tell the story of Taiwan because this is where this movement actually has taken off the most. Taiwan has been spoken about several times at this conference as really an interesting case study of where AI-generated disinformation, deep fakes, they're facing a barrage on their election, on their society, attempting to polarize, divide, and conquer. But Taiwan is incredibly tech-savvy, and they hired a digital minister, Audrey Tang, who's the author of this New York Times article, to sort of foster innovation in governance, to make it more responsive, and to figure out how to take public input into policymaking in ways that felt meaningful to the public, that it wasn't just an exercise of a pollster gathering public opinion, but this technology allowed people to talk with each other and actually evolve and converse with each other where they would actually build consensus. And over 30 policy issues have now been basically solved through the use of this technology called Polis, which I'll show you a little bit more about here in a minute. But it's made Taiwan much more resilient to infodemics. Part of that is Minister Tang has created videos using fake AI, like basically to say, this is what fake generated video looks like. It's called pre-bunking, not debunking after an AI comes out, but getting the population ready to be able to identify false information. So it's not just young people, as we discussed earlier today, that can spot false information. The whole population now has received digital literacy on what a fake video looks like, and it made it more resilient to attacks. And yeah, the deliberative technology called Polis that's been used now for almost 10 years in Taiwan has helped the country overcome some of the polarization and to address themes of populism as well. But mostly it's just been able to generate creative consensus policy options that receive wide public support from all sides of the spectrum, and therefore pass and make the country able to solve problems, which is actually the great danger of polarization, is that the society, such as the United States, becomes very difficult to discuss or pass any policy solutions to migration, climate, et cetera. Audrey Tang actually just this week released a new book with Glenn Weil from Microsoft. The book is called Plurality: The Future of Collaborative Technology and Democracy, and there is a new film coming out about Digital Minister Tang's life and how Taiwan has become this shining example of technology to support democracy. The book both outlines the dangers of AI for democracy, but it really places the emphasis on what is going to be possible for greatly expanding public participation and deliberation. I want to show you a couple of other books that have been really critical to the movement. So Jeff Mulligan wrote this book on collective intelligence called Big Mind, but basically it argues diversity, pluralism is a natural order. We see it in the environment. We now know our microbiome requires us to eat different kinds of bacteria to be healthy, to stave off disease. In the same way, diversity, pluralism is healthy for democracy. We need to be able to engage with a lot of different ideas. So that kind of idea diversity, identity diversity is essential for a thriving democracy. And the way that technology can help this is again outlined in this book, and it names Polis as well as one of the examples of a technology that helps different people listen to a wide variety of ideas. Why is this? Okay, there we go. Another book, Hearing the Other Side. People generally do not like to engage with people with different views. This book really, from the University of Pennsylvania, really argues that we often think of civic engagement and deliberation as kind of the same, but actually they're in tension with each other. Especially in polarized societies and polarized contexts, people actually dislike engaging with other opinions, especially when there's this sort of toxic polarization. So there's this tension between like creating a space where people feel like they can engage with other ideas. And that's where my peace building process background, and really it's the political science of how do you get different people with different views in the same room and come up with an agreement on how to move forward. And it really is drawing on not just centuries, but millennia of practice. So in virtually every tribal society around the world, deliberation is the method of a society gathering in a circle, talking from different points of view and finding a way forward. So with our Afghanistan program here at the University of Notre Dame, we call this the digital shura. Deliberation in Arabic and Islamic values is called a shura, where people sit in a circle and they talk, just as this photo from Afghanistan. With deliberative technologies, then, we can have large-scale exchange of views between the public. It can either be simultaneous or asynchronous, and it's iterative. So it doesn't just happen one day. It's usually happening over weeks, for example, on climate policy or migration policy, weeks or months even. This is what a Polis interface looks like. So if we were to ask the room here, I thought about doing this, but I didn't have enough time. What steps could help AI be good for democracy? You get to this platform, it can be reached from any 2G network, any phone in Afghanistan, Sudan, it's being used all over the place. You get to, first of all, participants vote on different ideas, and so you have to seed 10 to 20 ideas at the beginning, but then people can add their own ideas in this bottom section. So you're getting public input, and then people are voting on each other's ideas. And what you see is the algorithm is finding where there is common ground across groups. So the ideas that are shared by the most people of diverse identities rise to the top and basically get rewarded. Now, this is exactly the opposite of algorithms on Meta or X, which reward divisive content or the most emotional, sensationalistic content. So the algorithms and the AI that work in many of these deliberative technologies is finding the common ground and rewarding it, so incentivizing people to find that. Participants then get a sense of a whole opinion map of what's out there. They can find out how divisive a particular question in a conversation was. So there's all kinds of automatic generated output from these conversations. I just told you about the algorithms. You can see where the majority is falling, but also you get to see minority views. So it's not ignoring the minority or the sideline views. And what is so interesting is often the final solution started out as a minority view. And it's only through this deliberation of circling around the conversation that people come back and realize, okay, we saw that idea early on, we voted it down, and it's been gaining credibility. Stanford University's deliberative polling app actually has clear pre and post survey expertise or insight that shows the change in people's beliefs over time on migration, on climate, on many different issues. In Stanford's application of deliberative technology, the AI is actually mediating, moderating, facilitating the conversation. In other platforms, it's algorithms and AI that are synthesizing participant-generated content to map that opinion space. In closing, I want to just point out the ethics of AI. A lot of people don't even really understand how large language models, LLM, work. AI basically is like eating data. So if it's eating the internet, it gets all the corrupted data of the internet. On deliberative technology, it's eating public input. So it's a finite set of information that it's condensing. And the final slide here is just showing this deliberative technology or collective intelligence doesn't replace representative democracy or experts. It's complementary to experts with special information and intelligence, the collective intelligence of a group, and then the AI that really is the sense-making, helps synthesize large amounts of data. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's fantastic to be here. I am a practitioner, and this is, I think, my first time that I'm officially back into the halls of academia, and it's wonderful to see old friends, former professors, mentors, friends, colleagues. My talk is about applied AI, and I'm going to try to remember my academic hat. I'm going to try to be a little bit more theoretical than applied, and I'm going to try to intersect with Dmitry's conversation about human-AI interaction. That's what we're trying to do at the Center for Analytics, and also from Lisa's conversation where she emphasized the ethics of AI. So my job, day in and day out, and what I'm obsessing about most of the time is about operationalizing ethical AI, what that means for the Department of State. And of course, AI is not new. It's been around for a while, but ChatGPT hit the scene in November, and then everybody was talking about generative AI. At the Center for Analytics, what we're trying to do is institution building. So I see a lot of my old professors from UT Austin, and they're probably saying, yes, that's exactly the way to implement new policies. The Center for Analytics is basically at the center of the organization of the Department of State, and the Department of State has a competitive advantage in that we have missions, embassies, consulate touch points across the world, over 270 of those. And while we don't focus on the policy making side of it or the shopping around policies, we do focus on enhancing the work of the workforce of the Department of State's diplomats, consulates, and other officials to carry out the policy objectives that they have or mission priorities that they have. I wanted to also mention that CFA, or the Center for Analytics, arose from this wave of, or call or a movement to start creating institutions that would allow for those policymakers to make decisions based on data. And it sounds like commonsensical to us, but the whole movement of data-informed policymaking or evidence-based decision-making was institutionalized in 2018 with an Evidence Act. So as a former lawyer, I emphasize, a lot of these policies or language in acts that create new offices. And what we do is that if the Department of State if you think of it as an octopus and every arm does its own thing, CFA is at the center. It's like in the main trunk is the brain of it, and allows for the workforce to implement policies. Now, we support embassies, consulates, ambassadors, everyone to be able to use technology, data, visualizations, data analytics, and of course AI to make sense of the world around them. Right now, we have about 55 of the 66 offices that we reach, and we usually implement what we call strategies, different sets of strategies. To just give you a little bit of a flavor of what that is, we have something called the Enterprise AI Strategy. That basically means how is it that we're going to showcase people that text is data, and that data can inform whatever they're dealing with at the very instant or at the very moment. The Enterprise AI Strategy is a way of implementing the Evidence Act, which is at the higher level, of course. The Enterprise Data Strategy is specifically set for the Department of State, and it was created in 2001. So we usually focus on not only educating the workforce, but also showcasing through prototyping, through case studies, how it is that they can improve their decision-making with the data. And then when I came on board to the Department of State, which was about a year ago, the task was, okay, now we have ChatGPT in the scene, what are we gonna do with AI? It's all the rage about AI, how do we use AI? There's a ton of demand on AI. So we decided to deliberate and create, with a broad sector of offices and missions across the department, an enterprise AI strategy. And this was something that we did, and we're not doing it at a vacuum, but we're also looking at the international appetite for ethical AI. And we specifically focused on a draft, at the then draft, EO or executive order on the use of responsible AI. Now, the goals of the Enterprise AI Strategy is to get the technology right, make sure that the data is secure, get the communications right, make sure that people know what AI is and what is not, make sure that we got the ethics right, let people know what to do and what not to do, and finally, prototype, start small and scale so that we don't eat the elephant in one go, but actually start thinking what prototypes work and what prototypes don't work. So we do that by having a responsible AI official. I'm here, I'm part of the shop that does this kind of thing. But in addition to that, we have the Chief AI Officer, which is a federal level representative that sits at the Council of AI Officers across all federal agencies within the United States, and implements the vision across technology, ethics, and so forth. I know I don't have a ton of time, so let me just give you an example. So this is the kind of thing that we prototype. We have a project called the Declassification Project. There's a law that says that after 25 years, anything that has been classified has to automatically be declassified, no matter what. So this is good, but this is also carries some risks. As the volume of information increases, the amount of human review and manual declassification becomes overwhelming. So what we did is grab a small set of declassification decisions, train a machine learning model with it, and ensure that we had a human-in-the-loop quality assurance procedure so that subject matter experts review the output of the machine. And we found out that through this small pilot case study, we could declassify correctly, accurately, 98% of the time. And that usually allowed the people that are subject matter experts on this office to save 60% of the time without having to deal with the things that are obviously declassifiable. So this is good for two reasons. One, it allows people to augment their work, but in addition to that, it allows us to declassify as many papers as possible so that they can become part of the public sphere without having to change the law or get pushed back for that transparency push. Now, the big thing that we're doing now is onboarding an LLM into the secure infrastructure of the State Department so that the workforce, diplomats, consulates, everyone around the State Department, which is about 100,000 people, can have access to a safe and secure ChatGPT interface so that they can do a lot of the analysis that you would do in ChatGPT while controlling for some of the risks, including the risks for hallucinations or confabulations. And we take this very seriously. We engage very closely with NIST, specifically with the office that created the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, and we're also a member of the AI Safety Institute. So let me finalize by saying that AI is a big thing. People are all talking about it. We're creating new institutions. And just today, or maybe it was yesterday because it was in Korea, Secretary of Commerce announced the creation of a network of AI safety institutes from Canada, UK, Singapore, Japan, and the EU AI office. Maybe they should include Taiwan in there so that people can talk about what is the best way of implementing responsible AI within government so that we can use these tools to enhance our work and not necessarily take over our work. That's it.
So I was incredibly impressed with all three of our presenters. So just before we move on to questions, can we just do one more round of applause for these phenomenal panel? Now, we're about to open it up to open you guys up to the deliberative process through allowing you guys to ask some questions of our panel. We do not have the assistance of artificial intelligence to be able to do that. We are going to be relying on our human volunteers who will be available. You'll have to raise your hand. It's very analog. So I'm going to have to ask for your assistance to be both courteous and kind to our presenters, panelists, and patient. If you are listening online, feel free to engage as well and ask those questions. We have somebody who is monitoring, and we do want to bring you also into the deliberative process as well. But I'd like to just start out by asking the panelists one of my questions, which is, as I was listening to each one of you, I was really amazed at how all of you really were talking about ways that the academic process can intersect with what people do as practitioners, whether it's people who are involved in NGOs, whether it's people who are involved in government, or really even just everyday citizens. But as we all know, that there's a little bit of a disconnect between what people do in academia and what people are actually doing on the ground. So I'd like to ask each of you really a two-part question. You can answer both parts or even just one of those parts. What can academia do to be able to communicate the type of research that they're doing that can help people who are practicing democracy on the ground? And how can practitioners reach out to academics to be able to learn and understand some of these different ideas? Because it's definitely a two-way street, depends on both sides communicating. So how can we improve those lines of communication, whether it be as academics or whether it be as practitioners? So why don't I go ahead and start with Gio?
Okay, great. Thank you. So two things. The AI Safety Institute is a new institution that was just created. So if y'all are interested in AI specifically or applied AI, and I understand that AI can mean a linear regression all the way to a deep neural network. So, however you want to take that. The United States, specifically the Biden administration, is emphasizing on responsible AI. So they have a website called ai.gov. And you can go in there and you can find out all of the initiatives that they have, including a national research network for universities to engage in these topics, becoming part of the AI Safety Institute of the US through its consortium. You just basically sign an MOU to say that you want to work on this. The AI Safety Institute is really interested in finding out how we can best use human-in-the-loop or other testing and evaluation, verification and validation methods so that they can understand the limits of AI. And then finally, join the discussion. I know that there's a lot of students here, so join the discussion through LinkedIn. Connect yourself to those. There's a lot of asynchronous conversations going on at the level of the federal government. So right now, the administration is emphasizing on that, and this is the opportunity to enter. About the legs of this, well, it remains to be seen. I know there was a panel about, the effect of the election, and there's something to be said about that. But, I don't think AI is going anywhere. I know it's kind of like we're in the hype of we're in the peak of a hype. But in the event that the hype calms down, I don't think it's going to go away completely, because this engine is not being fueled by the government per se or by academia, to be quite frank. It's being fueled by companies, and that conversation is being fueled by companies. The other thing is there's currently a hiring surge. So there is something called, and this is very technical and witty, but there's something called a shared certification, which means that the federal government has a campaign to bring on as many social scientists, computer scientists, humanists that are interested in the AI space, so that they can come in and work for us. So I know of certain specific agencies that are building teams 50 plus strong. So if you're young and you want to or if you're interested in making sure that some of the things get done correctly, and you are interested in applied AI on a full-time basis, there is an opportunity to do that. So those are just two ways, and if you're interested in more ideas, I'm happy to talk.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was fascinating to hear what the State Department's doing. Two responses to this question of academics and practitioners. At the end of June here at Notre Dame, we're going to be holding a 4-day workshop with about 35 practitioners working in very polarized, undemocratic contexts. They're coming here to Notre Dame to learn how to use deliberative technologies and map out the process, because there are a lot of decision points. It's a socio-technical process, so there's a lot of work that a group needs to do to figure out how to deploy them in a safe way. And what we're hoping is the Lucy Institute for Data and Society and the Keough School of Global Affairs, the faculty in both of these departments here at Notre Dame, will accompany this group of case studies, practitioners on the ground, learning what is safe deployment of these technologies, what is more dangerous, what are all the lessons we can learn about this socio-technical process. So if you're interested in that workshop, please let me know. We're having some people from the community also sit in here at Notre Dame. The second thing I want to say is that a number of us from deliberative technologies are working with AI companies, a number of different companies, OpenAI as well as some others, to figure out how to use the deliberative technology to actually have public input into the rules that AI follows. So for example, Remesh, which is another deliberative technology, has now published a paper which I co-authored on its work with OpenAI to have public input into questions like, somebody types into ChatGPT, is the COVID vaccine safe? If the OpenAI is reading the internet, you're going to get a lot of weird answers. So you can't do that. You have to specifically tell ChatGPT where to go on the internet. You need to go to medical assemblies. You need to go to peer-reviewed articles. And it was fascinating in this very practical discussion that we had on the Remesh platform, how a lot of people said no to peer-reviewed articles at first, and then we realized people don't. They asked, what is a peer-reviewed article? So this is where deliberation is really important, that the public isn't just polled, do you support this? But you can allow this period of education where people can ask questions. What is a medical authority? And ask, how is that established? How is our vaccines tested? And it was amazing. We got to over 80% Republican Democrat consensus on a policy to guide ChatGPT on how to answer that question, is the COVID vaccine safe? So that's just one example of academics and practitioners. Thanks.
I just want to add that what academia can bring to this problem is to organize such conference like now, like Lisa have, Keough School has, and Lucy Institute, some multidisciplinary centers that invite both academia and practitioners to discuss this. And to academia, people also can explain that AI is not so dangerous, and there are of course, there are some threats, but also there are a lot of opportunities to use AI, and to explain this as the function of academia, I think.
So we've got lots of time available for questions, and we're excited to hear what your thoughts are, whether you're in person or online. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. We've got volunteers looking to hear from you to be able to open it up to your questions to this panel.
Hi, my name's Jody. I'm a researcher here at the University of Notre Dame. It's great to hear your optimism for the benefits of AI. I'm also curious if you hold concerns that AI may increase social inequality and particularly may reinforce the digital divide as we incorporate it into more government and democracy usage. Thank you.
Yeah, of course it can. And my research showed it that public and mass media are concerned about raising inequality, losing jobs, all this that we hear from mass media. But again, yeah, AI is only a tool, so it's like any tool. So you can use it in some bad interest, or you can use it in public interest. So it's up to us how we will use it. So, and inequality is just a social problem. It's humans who produce inequality. It's not AI. Humans can use AI to produce more inequality, or humans can use AI to reduce inequality. So it's just a tool. So, no.
Ditto.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking that, so I think in terms of countries right now, there are some examples of some countries in sub-Saharan Africa using AI for the right reason. And then I'm also thinking, like, in terms of workforce issues, you know, the problem set that we have is that we have a lot of information and very little time to actually discern or even discover some patterns that, you know, we just can't do it because we don't have enough people, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources. So, you know, at my office, we're very serious about making sure that not only do we bring in people that have AI knowledge and skills, or that skill set, but also upskilling people that are there, so that that divide is really minimized. So it's about what Dmitry said. It's like a, you know, where do you stand philosophically? I mean, do you want to increase this kind of problem, or do you want to make sure that that divide gets bridged? So we take it very, very seriously, and we teach everyone about AI and about data too, to be quite honest with you. What is data? Is text data? That's like a big question, right? And we have to say, yes, text is data. And then, you know, how do you analyze that data and so forth and so on. We've taught over 60,000 hours to everyone at the State Department, from people that are just starting off to ambassadors. They get, you know, they get like mandatory courses, and also we have elective courses that are more advanced on the application of AI. So yeah, it's about what you do with the tool. It's not the tool itself.
Hi, thank you. I'm Patrick McQuestion, a PhD student here at the University of Notre Dame. I had a question as well about the proprietary dimension to AI, and how, from practitioners, do you see this sort of tension, because AI seems to be a very private sector kind of endeavor, and how does that relate with the deliberative process? I mean, yeah. How do you see this balance of public and private, you know, adventure or endeavor evolving over time?
So let me start here and saying, okay, so when we're talking about AI, let's just talk about machine learning and then natural language processing. So AI and generative AI, or general use AI. For all of these, you have baby models, and then you have full-blown large language foundational models, right? We, as the practitioners, we use open source models that we know that they're legit and that we know that the sources come from a verified, trusted source. So the machine learning declassification project that I talked about, that's a open source model. That's not somebody's like private model. And we repurpose that, and apply it to our needs to make sure that we can analyze things accurately and big volumes of data accurately. In terms of the large language model, specifically for the secure large language model, we have in the federal government something called, it's very weedy, but it's called FedRAMP, Federal, I don't even know what the acronym stands for, but it's this thing that actually goes in and validates and verifies that there are certain security standards set by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that are met. And there's this certification that says this model has met all of these standards, and therefore you can use it. And after that gets met, then we have our own internal standards that are federal-wide within the State Department's secure infrastructure that says you have an authority to operate if and only if all of these things are met. So it's not like willy-nilly, we could just buy anything. We have to go through this entire process to make sure that what we use is legit and that is not going to pose an undue risks to the people that use it in-house.
It's a great question, and it's a complicated answer. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, we're trying to build these democratic oversight into AI companies, which are private enterprises. So what would that look like in a more sustained, institutional, and actually independent way? Right now, it's OpenAI employing people to provide this method of democratic oversight, but ultimately that really should be independent, we know from other governance studies. So we have a long way to go in terms of actually making AI accountable to the public. You're absolutely right, actually, both of these questions, AI can be trained on very discriminatory, biased, it can reinforce, and it is reinforcing very problematic racist, sexist structures. And there's all elements of that, sort of even the data extractors, there's all kinds of stories of abuse and underpayment and distortion. So the ethical problems of AI are enormous. And it's, it's not a choice to put it back into the box. I think that's the thing, is that nobody realistically is saying we can get rid of it because it's so flawed. So how are we going to manage this challenge? How do we design governance systems to have democratic oversight and regulation of it? Getting our policymakers to understand AI, it's great that you're doing these thousands of hours. That's very encouraging because, as we've seen from Congress, they not even understanding how some of Meta works, it makes it really difficult to govern and regulate that kind of technology. So we have massive ethical dilemmas, and that's why the university and academia has a big role in translating, explaining, making sure that there are sort of enough public education about how these systems work and the problems that we can find ways of regulating.
Thank you. Elena Hofbauer, I'm with the Ford Foundation and I'm a Kroc alumni. And I was wondering, I was super interested in the example of Taiwan and these tools of deliberative democracy, which are little talked about and which I hadn't heard before, despite working on tangentially on issues of tech and society. So I would love to know if there is some effort to study what it takes for a government to actually make the shift to use tools like that. And if there is, I understand that it can work at super big levels, but what is the difference really in using it in Taiwan and much bigger countries? What would be some of the issues that influence that? And on another side, I'm also super interested in the fact that you mentioned that some of these tools can be used to depolarize. And I mean, we have heard a lot about how tools are used to polarize, tech tools are used to polarize, and it would be great to hear a little bit more about the opposite. Thank you very much. This is an excellent panel.
All right, thank you so much for that question. So the UK Policy Lab, part of the UK government, has actually fully adopted POLIS. They integrate it into a lot of their policy making already. Austria, Germany, Finland, they have all done policy consultations with this deliberative technology. There are now hundreds of different companies standing up. I was just on the phone with the University of Oxford is developing their own AI tool for deliberation. Basically, this is a new industry in Europe where deliberative democracy has a lot of support, and now deliberative technology, is rapidly evolving. I want to say there's kind of two different theories of how it works. Polis and Remesh, some of the two largest companies, the UN uses Remesh, for example, in its Libya, Tunisia peace processes. These two platforms are anonymous. You don't put your own identity or your face. There's nothing that marks your identity. So you're participating anonymously, and it's really people are judging ideas on the value of the idea alone. Stanford's deliberative polling tool is video-based, so it's very much your identity, it's relationship building. You have a mediator who's helping you talk and build relationships with each other, and the deliberation happens through those relationships. For somebody in peace studies, this is fascinating because most of our theories of change are based on relationships. So the fact that Polis and Remesh have been able to solve problems with large groups of people really not involving any relationship building, just purely on the ideas alone, which is much easier to do large scale, tens of thousands or millions of people, because you can't really do that if it's video based, right? Unless you're doing small groups and putting them together. So I think there's a lot that needs to be studied here, actually. And again, Europe is moving along, but last month, Jigsaw, which is part of Google, held a big consultation with about 60 of us. Actually, Audrey Tang was there from Taiwan. She's like the cheerleader for all of us. We're all following her model now because, yeah, there's 60 practitioners here in the United States working on deliberative technology. And Jigsaw is just getting ready to say, hey, this is the democracy movement for AI in the public square, which was the title of their symposium. In terms of depolarization, again, it's so fascinating because if you just take a poll, you get very polarized positions. But when you put people engaging with each other's ideas, it moderates it when it's happening in a safe space. So there's been really interesting research that exposure to different points of view can actually increase polarization when it's not in a safe space, and when you have algorithms that are emphasizing the difference. Duke University had a really interesting study on that. But where you have a safe space that the algorithms and the AI is showing you what you have in common, actually exposure to different views has a moderating effect, and people shift their views over time. And this is the way that it can help with depolarization. There's a lot of, sorry.
Hi, my name is Faisal Jamil. I'm a former human rights law student here at Notre Dame, and currently I'm a research associate at Kellogg. So since I'm a human rights lawyer, I have some concerns, or I'm wondering where's the human rights assessments when it comes for this initiative to maybe establish more regulatory frameworks on the responsible use of AI, and maybe what is the impact that might have on the component of the right to freedom of speech or freedom of expression when it comes to access of information, and also, like, for example, the sources that AI can use to share information. How does that doesn't become a way of censor also, like some sources of information? So I'm just wondering, like, where's the human rights component when it comes to, like, this responsible use of AI? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that. So also former lawyer and also very much interested in human rights. So I mentioned the EO on AI, Executive Order 14110. There is a component there that calls for the Department of State, my shop, USAID, to have a playbook on how to implement or how to use AI in the furtherance of human rights. And as you know, there are different levels of, or different types of human rights, first generation, second generation, third generation. Every one of these types of human rights are going to have a different applied approach. There is no size one fits all. you have to have a totally different approach to each of them because of the inherent tensions between one and the other. So you just took me through this path that I love. But in terms of actually applying what's happening right now, State Department and USAID are having consultations with people across academia, practitioners, NGOs, companies, everyone, to sort of find out what is the general secret sauce, and then can you tailor that sauce to different types or issues on human rights.
Yeah, I want just can add that from regulation perspective, in mass media and public concern, it's actually a great public concern. So we figure out several clusters, several topics that are talking about regulations. But more maybe in Europe than in the United States, because Europe already has some acts adopted by European Parliament. So, but here we have to be cautious, I think, too, and gentle in regulation as well, because not to over-regulate this and not to, again, it's not only threats, it's also opportunities. So if we over-regulate it, so we will kill opportunities of using AI.
Elizabeth Bennion, Indiana University South Bend. I was fascinated by the work out of Duke regarding the algorithms and changing it, and also that you can be anonymous and not defend your identity and have people more open to change. It almost sounds like convincing Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk that they should change their algorithms is.
We're doing that.
What we need to do for the future of democracy. I just wonder your comments on that. I mean, because we can't just regulate. So yeah, how can we work in partnership with folks like that, and is that a piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, so I go out to San Francisco all the time to meet with Meta and YouTube and the others to talk about their algorithms and how they're deciding what content to advance to us, right, on our feed. But what the interesting thing is that Twitter, before X, had started using the Polis algorithm, basically, this bridging algorithm, on something called community notes. So when there's a contentious piece of information on Twitter, I'm gonna call it Twitter because it started under Twitter. It was called, yeah, anyway. Basically, people can add on their comments and other people can vote it up or down. And then the content on the note that has cross-cutting, cross-community consensus gets raised to the top. So the notes that are most widely agreed upon, and Twitter's been expanding this, X is expanding this now. So Elon Musk decided to keep it when he took over X. And now I just saw them last week in San Francisco. The people who run community notes are expanding this to many different countries. And this bridging algorithm that these deliberative technologies run off, they could be used by the big tech companies. And big tech could be a much safer, depolarizing space if they adopt some of this research and this work. So we're pushing it.
My name is Augusto. I'm with Kellogg Advisory Board. Like all technologies, there's a bright side and there's a dark side. This panel has helped me to see a lot of the bright side. And it's wonderful to hear these examples. And I can see there's a lot of room for cooperation and public policy to promote the constructive use of AI, the positive use of AI. But I'm also an economist. And when I see a dark side with a potential for abuse, manipulation, deep fakes, lie, destabilization, etc., it comes to my mind that what you need is public policy, particularly regulation. And I understand that regulation can strike a wrong balance. You can over-regulate, but you can also under-regulate. And we have learned to do this more or less in many difficult areas: medical, industry, consumer protection, financial sector industry. So I wonder whether there should not be a more robust effort to try to start thinking the broad philosophy of regulation of AI to kind of minimize or mitigate this very concerning dark side. No? So I don't see much enthusiasm for regulation here, but I was wondering if I can push a little bit in that direction.
Dmitry,
I can only agree with you. It's just that we have to find a balance, of course, between over-regulating and under-regulating this. And yeah, what else to add? Do you have something?
So, so if you follow the sort of perspectives and also the approaches that different places have, the EU has gone much further in terms of regulation. And then we have the EU AI Act with different levels of risks posed by AI, and some of those risks are unbearable levels of risk, and therefore they banned the total use of that. The problem with that approach, and this is something that I look at, because once you have that regulatory framework, you have to implement it. So how are you going to do that, right? So there's that additional issue of the implementation of that framework. In the United States, the EO 14110, the EO on AI, specifically focuses on the regulation of AI in government, and then also has taken a different approach, more a collaborative approach with the private sector, so that the private sector can adhere to certain voluntary commitments. So that's the approach that the US has taken. In addition to that, OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget, recently in March of this year issued guidance, which basically means laws for all federal agencies to follow, where it defines rights impacting AI and safety impacting AI, and it gives from 9 to 15 minimum risk management practice that every single agency has to comply with. And we also have to say, and that's basically my job day in and day out, what it is that we're doing. We have to have a public AI use case inventory and describe in detail how it is that we're complying with those risk management practices. So the US has a certain approach regulating the federal agencies and sort of taking a voluntary commitment approach with the companies that are building these big models. And the EU has taken much more of a set approach. Now, what's going to win at the end of the day, because we have other places around the world that are trying to figure this out. Some people are more leaning towards the US side. Some people are leaning more towards the EU side. But it all comes down to how is it that people are going to be implementing. And that's where the AI safety institutes that I just mentioned in the chat come into play. That's where that network comes into play, because they're going to start saying what's safe, what's not safe, what are the best practices, what do we know, what we don't know. Deepfakes and all of that, we know those risks, but there are certain risks in human AI interaction that haven't arisen yet. So we don't know what those are, and we need to have an institutional apparatus in place to grab those.
Hands right in the center, yeah.
Thanks. So democratic decision-making is complicated because you have different dimensions and there can be trade-offs, right? And so representative democracy has breadth of participation, large numbers of voters, authorized representatives to make decisions. Your decision-making model seems to rely a lot on self-selection, right? That people who are interested in a topic speak out and deliberate and make decisions. And so that raises the question again about inequality, right? Who participates? You would assume it would be people with a ton of time on their hands, or retirees, or who have extreme or specifically intense interests, and also people with a higher level of education. In the US, education is turning into a political cleavage, and so don't you foster inequality if you do the self-selection? I mean, Fishkin had essentially opinion polling. You had a representative sample of the population, but you don't seem to have that. So.
It's different in every situation. So, for example, in the use in what are these citizen assemblies in Europe, where they're using Polis or Remesh, it's definitely representative because those people have come into the assembly that way, and then they're snowballing it out so that it's different age group, different ethnic groups, different language groups, et cetera. The way Remesh is doing it with OpenAI right now is actually working with a demographic company that makes sure that we have demographic balance in terms of this input into AI regulations or rules. So this is where this workshop that we're having at Notre Dame at the end of June is really focusing exactly on this question. How do you use these technologies in ways that don't leave out certain parts of the population? So these are being deployed right now in Sudan with a citizen assembly that is representative. When we're trying to use them in Afghanistan, we want to make sure that rural women who don't have their own phone are going to be able to participate. And it's a complicated process to figure out how to get to rural Afghan women, especially right now. So we're talking about tablets, possibly. A researcher goes out and sits with people to fill out the poll. And this is actually where AI's language translation capability is changing every month, and it's going to make it a lot easier because right now there's multiple languages in Afghanistan, and also trying to get different people who speak different languages within the same country to be able to talk with each other and exchange those ideas is incredibly difficult. But once AI language translation improves, that might be easier. But this is where, this is not just a technical solution. There is a complicated social process around the use of these technologies that supports democracy. And they can absolutely, even deliberative technologies, be used for harm and to legitimate things that are not legitimate or representative. So I think that we're trying to be very aware of those dangers, and partly what our research is with partners around the world is trying to make sure that even for tools that have been designed to support democracy, that we really understand all the possible ways they could be abused or misrepresent populations. So thank you for that excellent question. I'm sorry I didn't address it more fully in my talk.
Hi, Michael Coppage from the Kellogg Institute. This is really a fascinating panel, and I like the metaphor of saying these are tools, and they could be used for good or they could be used for evil. And you know, there are bad actors around who would like to use tools for mischievous things, if not outright evil things. And you know, you've talked some about governments using regulations to ensure that tools are used for good by the federal government or by firms in society, perhaps in Europe. But a lot of the misuse of tools is being done by state actors who are not really subject to regulation except by the international system, which really doesn't have many teeth for enforcing these things. What ideas do you have about limiting the use of AI tools for bad ends against state actors?
That's above my pay grade. We can talk offline so that I can share my personal perspective.
Yeah, I mean, so right now we're deploying one of these platforms in Israel and Palestine, and it's become very complicated because of the reputation of AI. Because within Palestine, within Gaza, people know that AI has been used to target bombing sites in Gaza. And so when we're talking about AI-enhanced deliberative technology, Palestinians are very skeptical of this. And again, the question of regulation and how does the AI, there's just not enough even understanding of how AI works, and it's garbage in, garbage out, or data, you know, sort of what the data is that's feeding into the AI and what the question is. It really matters whether it's ethical or not, or sort of what happens to society. So the socio-technical part of this hitting the ground is very complicated precisely for that reason, that AI has all different kinds of reputations and how governments are using it.
So both questions actually are about very complicated problems. So, and to start to answer on this, it's a big conversation, but I'll try to be short. So first point is that we are only on the initial stages of using AI for political processes. Because for non-political, for technical processes, for not social processes, it's more easier than for political, for social processes to use. Because in political science, we know we have very complicated theories. So we have this crisis of representative democracy, new forms of democracy established, arised, and for now AI is, in my opinion, is used as an instrument for representative democracies, and it's on the initial stage, this deliberative technologies, yeah. But the new stages is how to use these deliberative technologies and AI in general for the new forms of democracy, for this liquid, when we have direct and indirect mechanisms, direct democracy and all democracy. So it's technological development coupled with complicated processes, social and political processes, and how to interact here. And your question is connected also actually with your, who are the other strong actors, not only state. State is a strong actor despite of globalization and the nation state lose its actorness into the process of globalization, but after the COVID, it's chain again, its authority. But the problem of actorness, and I think, my personal opinion, that everything will be good if civil society will take a lead, if civil society become more stronger than the state and civil society actors. So, and then along with the state, it's become an actor, and then AI can be used for good as well. Yeah. So, and it's another complicated process. Yeah. So.
Hi, thank you all. Sorry, I was given a mic a second ago while we were still talking. My name is Morgan Munson. I'm with the Nanovic Institute for European Studies. This was a wonderful panel, a lot of excellent ideas, like we said, the bright side of AI. And I'm thinking about the affective polarization that we see amongst people, very much emotionally charged against individuals and groups. And it seems like a lot of what I'm hearing is helping to maybe fight against this ideological polarization, the anonymous, polis thing. I'm wondering if there's lessons we can take from AI, though, about kind of depolarizing the affect of the relationships we have with real people in real life, and if there are positive lessons that we can kind of trickle down to our kitchen table conversations or talking with our colleagues in person, and where that kind of transfer lies between this fully algorithmic online world and what we're learning and how most of us are kind of walking throughout our day-to-day. Thank you.
I can respond to that because it's a different AI project I have here at University of Notre Dame that was actually started by two of my students who, right after ChatGPT was released, they came to the class I was teaching on technology and peace building, and they said, I wonder if we can train ChatGPT to respond to hate speech and to help people with affective polarization talk to each other. And in the class, within a half hour, we plugged in like a bunch of the communication skills I'd been teaching into ChatGPT, and we started feeding it. And within a half hour, we had built a training model that it could start doing something. So we got a grant last year. We just had it renewed to sort of expand this model of using a ChatGPT to coach people into how to talk with each other. So basically, we're training it how to take affective polarization kind of cues in a post on social media and coach somebody in how to respond it in a way that would diffuse, humanize, affirm human dignity, integral human development principles. So that's something Notre Dame students actually brainstormed themselves and is now being built. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm Clark Gibson. I'm on the Kellogg board, but I'm a professor at UC San Diego. Lisa, you mentioned, and I'm ignorant of this area, it sounds like, and I was wondering with some colleagues over the last couple of days, why hasn't the market produced some kind of algorithm that someone can buy, since we pay $6 a month for garbage in our phones, $6 a month that verifies the source of the information, right? It's either going to come from an established, it could list the newspapers or the peer-reviewed articles, right? So I'm surprised it doesn't exist, number one, and I'm not surprised it doesn't exist, right? So 30-something% of US citizens believe in ghosts. Almost a third of US citizens still believe there was electoral fraud in the last presidential election with zero data supporting it. So people may want music in the background because it makes my speech much more dramatic. But so there's different tiers. So I've never found as an oldster, I don't think that actually fit that last bit. That's better. I like that one better. Can pass them a hammer. Actually, I'm sympathetic. My brother is a music editor in Hollywood, so it fit. So there's willful ignorance, right? There's ideological ignorance. We're the richest, most educated, powerful country probably in the history of the planet, and people are disregarding data all the time or don't search for it. So the technology of AI, or whatever you want to call it, is great, and to make things efficient, fantastic. But it does seem, and this goes back to earlier panels and other discussions I've had, disinformation is still the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I think people who want to collaborate, get on interesting new software, reach consensus, that's a different kind of person than the politician who stands up and says things they know are lies to get votes. So that's only going to be limited. Those consensus building things are going to be limited to certain scopes. I'm much more worried about disinformation, national state actors producing disinformation, and somehow, because we're not going to be able to regulate it, getting a market solution to the verification of content.
If I could just start out and then I'll pass it. I mean, the issue of affective polarization predates AI or even social media. So humans have always been polarized, and the fragmentation of the media environment, actually, the democratization of the media environment actually was really a major cause of the toxic polarization that we have today. So I hesitate to focus too much on AI for that question because there's clear studies now. I worked in Afghanistan from 2009 to 2012, and it was the democratization of the media in Afghanistan that has now further polarized that country. Iraq is the same way, and we see it here in the United States, where people are watching different news sources, and the whole information environment is so politicized that to try to build AI that's going to be trustworthy is going to be very difficult. So there are a lot of academics who are working on that project or this problem, but it goes beyond that to the political capture of information stations, of publications, of media channels, radio and TV, and not just in the US, but in many countries around the world, where we thought we were democratizing the media space, and it ended up every ethnic group or religious group or political group created their own media station and are competing for what is now truth.
I think I wasn't clear. I don't mean the little democratization as if everyone gets, I mean, that's what you're going, that's fine. I'm actually saying, I think it'd be great if you wanted your own chat GPT and you said, I like these sources, I get to register and make sure everything
I see.
Here, right?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. It's going through like Cyprus via Moscow, like it's going to cut it off. Or if it's suspicious, it cuts it off. We have these things all the time on our phone, cutting off things. So where's the market solution for? These are places that I consider reputable. Now, we may disagree on what's reputable, right? So you may not want New York Times on your list of reputable sources, but at least we all have knowledge of where things are coming from.
So that exists already. There are some companies that are specifically focusing on curating specific data sets. And not to toot my own horn, but that's what we're trying to do with the State Department. So we just won something that's called the Technology Modernization Fund, which basically provides resources for institutions like the State Department to onboard generative AI in a responsible, safe, secure, and trustworthy way. And the idea is to have a curated set or database of curated set of information, not necessarily use the large language model to generate information willy-nilly, but to use RAG, which retrieval augmented generation, to grab that source of that treasure trove of documents and summarize it or generate new content based on the patterns that it finds there. So that's the idea for the Technology Modernization Fund. You can Google it, TMF, and it's going to show up the things that we're going to do. But in addition to the State Department, it's not like a unique idea. We have it, we're going to do it. That's what we're angling for. But other companies are already doing that. So there is one in the international development space. They're curating, they have a curated set of data sets and information, and they're putting on top of that a wrapper, a GPT-4 wrapper or some other large language model. And there are in other information spaces. But of course, these are like specific to like subject matter expertise and what people are interested in. For the public, maybe Lisa has more thoughts about that.
Yeah, maybe not only market solution, what I'm trying to say is that in all this story about AI and democracy, what is lacking is strong civil society actors. So we have corporations that produce, now as a drivers actually, they produce a product, OpenAI, ChatGPT. We have the states that trying to regulate it somehow. So like Europe, United States, all these ethical dilemmas and need of regulations. But we actually do not hear the voice of civil society actors. So what really they want. And if you take these political science theories, again, transformation to better democracy, they all are talking about the creation of mini publics, that they educated minority groups that will take a lead and help parliaments and government in policy-making process based on educated decision-making. So I think the future is there.
We are coming up on the end of the panel. I'm going to allow one more question, but before I do that, I've heard lots of people compliment the panel today. I'd like to just mention that I think you are doing a phenomenal job as an audience. So I'd like to give you guys a round of applause for how strong the questions are, as well as how polite and courteous you have all been. So final question.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Perrin. I'm a communications specialist in this field of development and peace building. In linguistics and the language people, one of the main ethical considerations with AI is the personification of like the UX, right? The whole interface where we say please and thank you because we just do, because we feel like we're talking to a person. Think that it's thinking and answering, and I'm wondering if there are any considerations in your context, in your fields, is this being addressed? Please elaborate.
100%. So encourage you to Google NIST Generative AI Resource Companion, and it's NIST A601. Anyway, Google that, Google NIST Generative AI Research Companion. It sort of says, it articulates the several risks on the use of generative AI, and one of them is the personification, or thinking that the machine is a bot or a person or whatever and has consciousness. So we're moving away from the terminology of saying hallucination to confabulations because of precisely that risk. And NIST has sort of gold standards on how to make sure that we mitigate those risks, and one of them is human in the loop and quality assurance. So as a big nerd, I'm saying that in the Department of State, we're really taking seriously this whole personification of the machine, and we're really taking seriously building methods, processes, and practices so that at the entire 100,000 people organization level, there's always going to be a human subject matter expert that's going to be in the loop, making sure that the quality of the output is consistent with the standards of the office for the time. Now, I can't say anything about, again, this is really truly above my pay grade, but I cannot say anything about what that tool is going to be used for, but I can say that as the use of that tool gets implemented, it's going to get implemented to meet the standards of the person. So encourage you to look at NIST, and happy to chat more so that we can sort of see if you can get in touch with the NIST consortium, because there's a lot of people working on that human-AI interaction right now.
So if you saw the movie Her, this becomes a clear issue. An AI expert, Carl Miller, he based in the UK, his fear about AI is one that actually hasn't been spoken here today, but that it's actually the development of these personal relationships that happen in WhatsApp groups, where actually a foreign country could create a personal app that just is listening to the person, makes friendships with them, and basically people start personifying AI and trusting, and then they slowly introduce the political propaganda, the persuasive propaganda. And Carl Miller thinks that this is actually the most dangerous use of AI, that people start forming personal relationships, that the AI is so trained on somebody's personality that they can build trust, and then the machine starts telling you what to do and how to vote.
And it's already happening. Sorry.
Is it really?
Yes, Southwest by Southwest. Tons of students and people, young people, were saying how they're using ChatGPT as their confidant because they didn't have any friends, and their only friend was like ChatGPT. So it's a thing.
So this is where the loneliness epidemic intersects with democracy.
So check out NIST. Doing great work.
Thank you so much today. Congratulations one more time for the panel.